Remote. No, it is not a controller. The thing that you use for your TV, your television, or whatever majig. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, I have my co-host, Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business, no matter the climate. Okay, pop quiz. Erica McMannes of Instant Teams was once on an edition of the Fervent 4. What edition was it? Leave that in the comments. And if you win, you will receive
an honorable mention.
And we'll put your mugshot on the screen and say, hello. Erica, how are you?
I'm good. Excited to be back. A lot has happened in the last 18 months on many levels.
It has. I can't remember if we talked about this before. If I was a good host, I would have rewatched the video from before, but I did not do that. That's terrible on me. But I remember I called you about 5 years ago. I'd gotten out of my physical office in downtown, and I was like, I want to start this remote. And I was like doing remote things then. I was like, we're just going to do everything remote, everything digitally. And it seemed like a lot of the world was going to start going towards that. And I called you as someone who had a company that was doing this already. And I said, do you think like there could be a podcast around this? And I remember you said, yeah, it would be cool. You should do it. And then I never did anything with it. And it's interesting, like how, like, I feel like I had good ideas, like on that. It was the right time to get out of the office, obviously with this last, the 2-year mark, if we're looking at it, like it's been wild, but remote was really still at the time, even March 2020 of last year, something that I think people frowned upon, didn't understand, insert, 10,000 other buzzwords now around it.
Yeah.
In your mind, it's September 2021, however many months that is. In your mind, has anything changed from a remote perspective on the things that you did before? Maybe like late 2019 to 21.
It's funny, we talk about it like it was like a century ago, right? Just because so much has changed, for sure. I think
way
it's
back yonder in 2019.
Seems like
there was a girl named Erica.
I think it's the whole framework that has changed. Like back, whether it's 2016, 2019, like there was companies who were 100% remote were like remote first, right? Like we were talking about the future of work. We were laying the groundwork for what the future of the workforce could look like. I mean, there's entire industries surrounding that. And then boom, all of a sudden the future of work is now. And so I think it's like a weird paradox to transition through when you think so far out in the future with what you're building and just hoping that you're going to be a part of history when it gets there. And then boom, all of a sudden you're there. And that's definitely what has happened in the past year and a half.
Do you think people like don't understand? Do you think people like the tangible aspect of things just don't grasp remote because they've done things in that like face-to-face way? Like, oh, you go to a restaurant, there's food that way. You're in retail, you're that way. You go to your office and you talk to people. It just, they didn't grasp it. Is that the kind of crux of it? Or
yeah, I think work has never been remote at scale. And so those of us who like hoped for it and knew it was coming, embraced it early, early adopters, so to speak. But I mean, especially big business, right? Businesses who have been brick and mortar, whether they're small or enterprise, they've, we've always done it this way for decades. And a lot of those leadership teams are, older, and they just don't even know how to wrap their brains around, okay, how do we take this function, or how do we take this team, or how do we take strategy in a remote way?
Yeah. I mean, it's strange just in the sense of, if you look back before all this happened and you told somebody that, yeah, I have a home-based business, you weren't really taken seriously.
Yeah.
It's like you had to have an office in a building or a storefront with the sign out front before you were taken seriously. And now everything is like totally transformed, that everybody has had to go that way. And now people are fighting. If as companies try to bring everyone back in the offices, everyone's fighting, but they don't want to go that way. So if you experience that on your end in terms of, are things status quo in the sense of there's not been a real push to bring people back to the office, or is it everything's just cool staying where at home?
Yeah. I mean, we have been 100% remote from day one. So we have never had a brick and mortar business. We've
Right.
never
Like in terms of like the clients that you all
Oh,
serve.
yeah. If anything, the past 18 months have been great for business, right? Because people are either just asking like, hey, how are you scaling? How do you communicate remotely? And so a lot of the things that we've built internally and structurally at Instant Teams to build and communicate with large remote teams have definitely become even sometimes more value driven than like the actual business model in some cases, because people just need to understand like how to communicate and how to keep people driven in the remote space. So that has changed a lot. Like people are quickly like, oh, and it's also become like risk management, right? If another closure happens and I have, 200 people on my team, what are we going to do? And so like, well, why don't you just restructure to keep people remote if everybody's happy and it's working versus having to transition again.
So with that, one of the questions I really want to hear on you from your point of view is there become a salary distinction between people that say, hey, I'm willing to take 30% less in order for me to stay at home? Or what are you seeing on that front from a compensation standpoint?
Yeah, I don't know. My camera just went fuzzy. I'm not sure why. So hopefully
that's the number one thing. That's the problem with remote work. I can't see you in full detail. Here, I'll take my glasses off, and then it'll do the same thing.
There you go.
So that's a hack. Just snap at it. There you go. Yeah, it's definitely been an opportunity to bring like democratizing what people expect with salary. I mean, again, us being remote from day one, startup building up to where people, full-time salaries, salaried employees versus hourly and all of that. I actually just saw there's a big, conversation on LinkedIn. Remote work, hybrid happens every single day in the LinkedIn space. I think it was just Zillow is like, hey, we're going to pay people 100% what they were making before, versus Facebook and other companies like, oh no, you're going to get a pay cut if you're remote. From a logical foundation, like if people are doing the work and they're delivering and they're being productive, there's no reason to penalize people from being remote. I mean, yes, in a way, at least for me, being remote is a benefit and a perk in and of itself. But yeah, no, people are still doing work and they're contributing in harder ways in some ways. Like salary should not be cut. Personal opinion.
Yeah. So let's dive deeper into that, because I think I think you said the logical. What was the word you used?
Yeah, logically, like if you think about the productivity and the output of people, or your expectations and their job descriptions, none of that's changing. It's just
But when they're putting together their salary, I would assume logically that there's a lot of things that they're thinking about in that number, because of the space that they're in and stuff like that. So how, as a business owner, like when you have a big company that comes to you and says, hey, like, we're kind of around the same conversation that we're having. Like, we don't think we should do this because logically our expenses are tied to this person because this is the way that things are. Like, how do you explain to them that this doesn't make sense for the way that you've put together your breakdown of expenses? Because I guess ultimately that's what you're saying is like the way they're looking at their office. And I think that's a lot of it, right? Is, they're paying thousands of dollars, in some cases, a ridiculous amount of money for bandwidth, for, water coolers, whatever.
Yep.
And now you're saying, oh, by the way, we're going to still have to pay all that stuff. And the amount of money that you pay the employee is still going to be there. Oh, and somehow in this, that employee is going to start asking, probably, because we haven't really seen this yet, but that employee is going to start asking for a stipend for all this other stuff too. Oh, I want money for my Wi-Fi every month. I want money for whatever it is.
Yeah.
How do you handle that conversation? Or what do you say when someone, I think I'm doing a bad job of explaining it, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Like, it seems the logic to me actually is on the side of the business owner, not the remote worker. So
that's where my logic is too, is from my mind, especially if you go 100% remote, right? If you have an organization, which I understand some companies can't go 100% remote, just whatever industry reasons why. If you go 100% remote, then you don't have to pay lease. You don't have to pay electricity. Like the cost savings there is so enormous that my logic there is, why would you also cut somebody's pay, right? You're already saving a lot of money to have this company 100% remote and allowing people to work from home. So why would you also cut? But I see your point if it's a hybrid model, right? So I think there's different like paradigms of the conversation.
Hybrid, or they haven't been able to get out of that yet because most offices signed 5 to 10 year leases, right? And let's say they're 1 year into it. Yes, I understand a pandemic happened, but I think that's why a lot of people are trying to bring people back in, right? I think a lot of people get the collaboration aspect of it. I think a lot of people are seeing that aspect of it, right? Where people are talking like this and they're like, I can't see that person forever. Oh yeah, I'm still here, right? But it's that person isn't present. Yes, there's a ton of other stuff. The chief economist from ZipRecruiter, Julie Pollack, says, although remote, she's going to agree with you, although remote work comes with fewer costs, such as gas for commutes, employees will argue their quality of work hasn't changed, so they're patient either. At the same time, I feel like a lot of times the business owner is always set up for failure in the United States from a lot of the taxes, the risk associated. So it's like, here's another one on there. And that's always been my battle, is the entrepreneur is throwing up everything. Yes, it's a huge risk reward, but like, let's give a dog a bone every once in a while. Like, and it's very much an employee-based environment. I get that, but that employee has got to get money from their, the business owner that's willing to pay them. So
yeah, I think that's a huge gap, is the compliance and the states. And that's a huge gap that's happened because, as we were all talking about the future of work and like hoping policies would change and things would kind of catch up with the ability to grow and manage remote teams. We all know federal, state legislation, like it's going to continue to be 10, 20 years behind what the workforce is now doing. And in my mind, will 100% continue to do.
Yeah, it's like college. It's like they're teaching you things that are so behind. It's like,
yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's not an easy, it's not an easy situation. My personal benefit is, as a business owner and entrepreneur, I mean, we have over 500 remote employees now. I've never done it another way. That's a privilege, right? Like I haven't had to make a transition. I've built from the ground up a foundation that runs a remote organization. So there's huge benefit in that, right? We were ahead of the curve. So we're going to continue to talk about these things for years, and kind of people are going to have to figure out what works for them. One solution's not going to work for all, but I do think the workforce is going to continue to demand remote work. It allows is that a word? Allows. I've made it up today if it's not. It allows different types of D&I opportunities, right, for people to contribute to an organization from a location that's nowhere near a headquarters, right? It opens up a talent pool. It allows a family to exist in and around you, right? It's not like work and home. And yes, there are downsides to that I'm sure we could get into too, but trending and labor force, even before COVID, was slowly, remote work has been increasing and the demand has been increasing. So if anything, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah. So for those people that were curious the answer to the Zack's trivia question, Erica was guest number 2 on the Fervent 4 show. So Zack and I, we did an initial pilot, if you will, to see if there was interest in something like this. And then everything shut down. Erica came on to the show to talk about, hey, people, remote work is coming. You better get with the program or else you're going to be left behind. I am interested to hear how your organization and your business has changed over the course of the last 18 months. You had mentioned that you have over 500 remote people working with you now. That number wasn't even close to that 18 months ago. So what has changed for you over the course of the last 18 months?
What was that number before?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. What has happened?
We would
So-
know if we were good hosts and we listened
Yeah.
to our episode. Probably.
You need your background researcher before
Come on,
pre-show
Gavin,
notes.
do it for us. Listen.
So the December right before COVID happened, I think we were at 77 team members, and so now it'll be 2 years. The end of this year, hopefully we're above 525 where we are now. So I mean, a couple of things have happened. I'd say it's kind of like 3 different ways. One, as a startup in a business, right? We've found our groove. We did, customer discovery, pivoting, trying to find where that all actually lives in a scalable model. Like that has definitely taken off, which has allowed us to build bigger teams, bring in bigger customers, build bigger business. The remote work attention has definitely helped everywhere from being able to talk about it from like a cultural and a communication standpoint, which is like one of my favorite things to talk about in remote work, to companies kind of, realizing, okay, if this is here to stay, or even if this is short term, we're going to need help. We need to find more talent than we can find, based in a location. So that has helped as well. And then just the growth continues to bring more growth, right? And the different fundraising rounds that we've gone through. We did an angel round. We closed a Series seed round the January before the pandemic happened. And we haven't not also struggled. We had several large customers in the travel and hospitality industry. So what happened to us that March, April, I mean, those companies, which is devastating, right? Like they were out in like 3 days, 100%. But just the build, right? So
to clarify that, so they basically dropped their contract with you within 3 days after COVID, is what you're saying?
Oh yeah, I mean, because they were done. They were under. I mean, they lost all of their business.
Wow.
I mean, it was devastating to see that happening. And then by chain going down, we also lost our business. With probably about 3 different customers because of it. So, all kinds of pluses and minuses. Whether the pandemic ever happened, right? Just the normal growth structure of a company and being sure that you're taking those pivots and staying ahead. So, a lot of growth. A lot of lessons, a lot of failures, but ultimately, I'm very proud. Yesterday was our 5-year of like, hey, we're on social media and we're a real company. We was the first post 5 years ago, and so to see where we've come, I mean, step by step has definitely been full of exhaustion and gratitude.
Well, congratulations! Happy anniversary!
Thank you.
If we had like a really fancy broadcast studio, this is where we would have someone knock on your door, not with a publisher's clearinghouse check, but with cupcakes and balloons. Yep. And our screen. We probably talked about this at least 17 times on the show. We do not have this capability yet, but balloons going wild, confetti, fireworks, all of that craziness.
Well, you've got a year now to work on that, and next year, for our 6th year anniversary, I will be your beta tester for that.
Noted. Most podcasts don't get to year 3, so I don't know, Tim. I think we're gonna have to pull the plug at that point. If we have some,
it's like breaking up with your girlfriend right before Valentine's Day.
Yeah, this is way too difficult of a demand for us to fulfill, and I was okay with the cupcakes, but. This is too much. Okay, so 3 days in, you have no idea what's going on. If we really look back, I think end of March, April, maybe even to a little bit of May, people are really still confused as to what's going on. You're only 4 years into business, 3.5 years into business at that point. You've read a lot of books. You've listened to enough Gary Vaynerchuk videos that like you're all jazzed up about everything, but actually being in that situation, how do you handle something like that? What do you do? Are you still at 75 employees at that time? Like, and then you lose, like, what do you do in that situation? Because I feel like most books, most people that'll tell you something, checklist can only get you so far, right?
So we had closed our Series seed round January 2020, and then March and April hit. And part of our strategic planning was like travel tech, right? Like those were fast growing companies. They were large. They needed a lot of support teams. So, I mean, that was a part of our strategic plan. So not only like current monthly, recurring revenue, but also our long-term plan at that point was to start to put some marketing dollars and sales efforts towards travel tech. And so, March, April hit. Not only did we now lose business, but we also lost our entire strategy with a fresh round of investors and expectations to continue to fulfill revenue. Upside to that is it affected everybody, right? And so there was a kind of a common understanding of like, hey, if you're a startup at a very critical growth stage, like the next couple of months are going to kind of be kind of hairy. And they definitely were. I mean, we did the PPP route, like we kind of followed the things that we need to do to stay ahead. But the other thing that shifted the most, even having already been remote, was the people. Because even though we've always been remote, most people, and we're very predominantly female, out of the 525, we sit still at like a 72% female employee base, 68% are military spouses. So the dynamic shift of the household and your family requirements is what we had to attend to. So we kind of took March, April, May, kind of into May to really, all right, we got to take care of people. We brought in some like outside kind of like survey research stuff to see like, hey, how are people doing? How are they adjusting? What can we do? Put some like flex work models in where you could possibly share a shift if, you're figuring out what to do with kids in the house now and you're having to help them virtual school, which is probably a whole nother episode of how we've all gotten through that, is working from home with virtual school and entrepreneurs and running businesses. But those were the two biggest things. Was one, obviously keeping the sanctity of the business going, because that wasn't an option for us, but then also the people, right? The teams, everybody was under extreme stress with the unknown. And then also having extra people in the house while they're trying to do their remote work.
Have you raised again since January 2020?
Interesting. You should ask. We actually, in the next month, will be opening up our next round. So
with that, I'm curious in terms of what your strategy is as you prepare to enter that phase. Are you going back to people that invested originally? Are you going to people that said no previously? Are you going to a whole new audience of investors that have heard about you since then? What's your strategy going forward in terms of raising that next round?
Well, the popular term right now is hybrid. So a little bit of all of that. And this is where I will shout out to my co-founder, who is the CEO of the company. And she has always led like the fundraising and the investor relationships. And she has done the most phenomenal job, which again, could be a whole episode, I'm sure, for you guys, on keeping investors warm and building relationships and keeping people updated, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it's amazing to see how that has just built like this almost crowd of supporters in this network who are kind of waiting for the next round. If anything, how Liza has built up that investor support and network is kind of what has helped us push towards the next round. Like people seeing the growth, giving feedback, saying, hey, when are you going to open your next round? And after you hear that enough, you're like, okay, there's a need here, right? Like people are wanting, it's an opportunity, like especially an investment as female founders and just the way the market is right now. Hearing all those signs and signals is like, okay, this is the time, right? Like we do need to do it now. So we have investors from the last round who are like, hey, I want to know first, right? Like people are kind of like, hey, I want to know, you let me know when it opens. We want to be a part of it, which is so awesome just to see validation of what we're doing and the growth and the support.
Yeah. I mean, it's so many people like that are trying to raise, they psych themselves out of it. Just because someone says no, they think that they never can go back to them ever again. And it's like, no, that's where you got to add them to a monthly update list, let them know what your progress has been, and just keeping those lines in the water. I mean, it's just, and you're saying firsthand and demonstrating firsthand how important that is. And then once you have that momentum going forward and it comes time to raise again, it's not as difficult as it once was.
I've actually been in a situation, this is probably 2012 timeframe. I had a verbal agreement with someone, basically sitting at the last meeting beforehand as just a random checkup of how the business was doing. Had given money before, was planning on giving money again, didn't like something that I did, backed off, and I had to regroup. I might have even included you in this, Tim. I'm not going to say who the person was. or the company was, because you definitely would know who it is in that situation. But I had about 36 hours to make a decision. Like, am I going to fix this relationship, or am I just going to let it fly and be okay with it? And I immediately, and I think this is like Christmas Eve, day after Christmas, I ended up scheduling a meeting that I believe this happened like in a couple of days before Christmas, had to fix it, emailed and scheduled within a handful of days, and ended up, going into the office on the day after Christmas to try to fix it. It took about 6 more months to rekindle the relationship, did all those things, ended up getting more money afterwards, like significantly more money. But like, I had a yes, screwed it up, turned into a no. And it's at that point where you have to be like I was like, I don't even remember what the situation was, but I'm sitting there like, I just lost a significant amount of money. I don't know what I'm going to do. I better figure this out really, really quickly, though. And so when you said, like, I have so many notes already that I want to touch on, but when you said Liza has done a good job of keeping investors warm, like, is there a strategy that she's following? Is there, and I know she's doing it, not you, but is there any kind of like tips that you can give us on that? Because I feel like most people, they just blindly email people. I haven't invested in a company in a long time. I still get this crap from people where they're like, hey, we want you to raise money in my company. And I'm like, I don't even know who you are, you donkey. Like, this is ridiculous. Sometimes I forward the stuff to Tim and it's just like, I have no interest in this. Like, what are some of the things that you've seen work for you guys to keep that interest over the last few months, years, whatever?
Yeah. So one of them is an email update, but it's very strategic, right? And it's like, it's broken out, and Liza compiles that, and that's everywhere from like revenue, wins and losses, right? I think transparency is key. Like that's how you build trust with investors, because no investor wants, they know, right? They've been in it long enough. They know everything is not great all the time. So everywhere from like growth numbers, revenue numbers, to PR, media, like what are the fun things we have done, or were there any key hires? Like giving people an inside view to what you're doing, especially when they're investors, is kind of what builds that trust, right? So they see it growing, so that when the time does come, you're not just cold emailing people like, hey, remember me? You talked to me once. We're ready for the next round. It's like I said, they're asking us like, oh, hey, your last update was great. Are you guys thinking about another round? It's just been fascinating to watch, because I've been a part of startups where, that's not the case. And like, you're out on like an 18-month trail, beating down doors and on airplanes. And, we haven't had to do that. And I think a part of that really has been the relationship drive and knowing when to say no. Taking money from people has a lot of strings attached, and they may offer you a lot of money, but you might want to say no because of their requirements to take their money. So both sides.
To take that one step further, I mean, right now, valuations of companies are just bananas.
Yeah.
So you can get a brand new company that thinks that they're going to try to raise money at a $16, $20 million valuation. Yeah. And these investors have no idea who these people even are. Right. Whereas once they've already been working with you for 1, 2, 3 years, however long it's been, and it's so much easier to continue investing with someone that they already know. They know how you operate. The relationship has already been there. So a lot of investors now continue to invest in the companies they're already working with. And then with you already establishing relationships with current investors or investors that may have passed, you've already hit that stride with them. So it's much easier for you to raise money. So kudos to you for continuing on that strategy.
Yeah, I think one of the not hardest things, but biggest learning curve, right? Like I never went to school to learn how to work with investors. Like it's just one of those things you're not necessarily taught, is the different type of investors and the different time when it makes sense. So sometimes the no is, well, no, not right now, because we focus on this type of industry or this type of growth metric, and just really understanding and kind of becoming familiar with that landscape has been also beneficial, right? Like learning, who do you go to at this stage? Who do you go to at this stage? Who is just going to tell you no just because of the function of how their fund works, even though you might be at the right stage. So like no ego involved, right? You just got to learn and watch and observe and kind of figure it out as you go.
I interviewed Damon John. I asked him, when you hear no in business, what do you do? And he goes, a no is an absolute maybe. And it's basically like, just, you don't know, right? The same, like a yes is an absolute yes, right? Or it kind of like is the same thing where it's like, understand why. it's a no right now. Understand why it's a yes right now. Understand why, understand all of the aspects of that. And I think it was really enlightening to me just to really hear that and be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense for a guy who, turned a pair of jeans into a multi-billion-dollar business. I mean, good for him in that. Investors, in general right now, headlines will say, or hold on, let me think about how I want to phrase this so I don't get in trouble when the clip comes out. The landscape of the investor market, from a headline perspective, will say that females are not getting a lot of money in startups, right? Yep. It's even worse from a full diversity perspective. Yep. In your mind, but you hear a lot from the crowd saying, we want to invest in female-backed businesses. Yep. Do you see that the people in the crowd raising their hands saying, and I know this is a generalizing statement, but do you feel like the crowd is actually doing what they say they want, or is it all just nonsense? For example, we had a guest on, Maya Houlihan, who basically says it's all nonsense. You're seeing a lot of stuff on the headlines. You see a lot of people say they want to support, but when it comes down to it, it ain't happening. What are your kind of general thoughts on headlines saying females need more money, the crowd saying, yeah, let's invest in them? Are we getting closer? Is that happening? What's going on in that world?
It's getting closer. So I think the raising of the hands and the awareness is always going to bring, okay, we want to do this, but it's going to require change and thought process and shift, right? Female founders, minority founders, they're in different situations, they're in different dynamics, and your fund, how it's set up to serve, founders outside of those demographics might not work in the expectations. So I have to say we have probably strategically weeded out the ones that aren't going to work, right? But have found the ones that do understand it. I mean, we've raised 2, now going into 3 rounds, 100% remotely, right? The traditional is you're going to have to hit the ground and travel to 72 locations and pitch in person.
Move your business to San Francisco, yada.
Yeah. And we're like, well, guess what? We are military spouses. We still have, there's 6 kids between the 2 of us. Like, that's not going to work, but it doesn't mean it can't
work. The fundamentals of the business, right? I mean, that's why you started, because it's
right.
It's
right. Yeah. It's part of our core. Yeah. So we have enjoyed that, like, kind of, breaking expectations, and people who say no. I think the most validating thing is, when they come and they're like, oh, we probably should have listened a little closer, or we probably should have asked more questions. Like, there's those like, oh, we should have. We're like, all right, we're going to continue to prove you wrong. Right.
A follow-up to that is you said something, minority related businesses, minority founded businesses, female founded businesses are set up differently, or something like that. Can you go into a little deeper? Because I don't see that, right? From the surface, I mean, a founder is a founder. What's really different? Right. Where do you see in that there is some sort of differences in that? And it was directly towards it sounded like investor portfolios are set up a certain way or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's, not business, right? Business is business, numbers are numbers, growth is growth. Like, those expectations you have to prove, and no way about that. I think it's who people are as individuals. So, I mean, if you are a tight Silicon Valley investment firm and, look at the demographic, most of those people, they're 21 to maybe 28, no families, location based. That's not going to give you diversity or access to, a lot of different types of opportunities of companies who could grow and be even more successful. But if you're not willing to look outside of kind of that structural outreach of who our fund serves or who we want to be successful. So I think it's really the shift of even taking out the business. If the business is working, then you got to be able to work with who the founders are and what they're building and how they're building it, and understand that whole dynamic. Nobody gets there's no go free or, free cards, right? You still, no matter what type of founder you are, you got to check the boxes, you got to deliver, you got to bring in revenue, you got to show success. It's more of that interpersonal dynamic of expectations. Oh, you're going to fly out here every 3 weeks and be here for a week to justify how the business growth is going. yeah, we can't do that. And just because we can't do that doesn't mean that we're not growing a very successful multi-million-dollar company.
Or does it make sense to even do something like that? I mean,
Right.
to me, it sounds like a load of bollocks.
One of my biggest soapboxes right now, and I haven't quite grasped on like how to start, I don't know, talking about it or launching it out there, is
not a milk crate, a soapbox. Okay.
Soapbox. Yes, soapbox. That is a weird analogy, isn't it? Like, we'll have to research. Somebody needs to research that one for us. Where did that come from? It's friends and family. I think that is a huge blocker to diversity fundraising because a lot of people don't have friends and family who can contribute money, right? And we have been able to bypass that. Like, we never did a friends and family round by making money early on, right? Like, we had a money producing model. But just to tell somebody you won't talk to them, or they won't be able to, you know, pitch or apply for their next round because they never did a friends and family, to me is something that has to be changed. Friends and family giving you money really, to me, proves nothing other than you have people who can give you money.
Well,
So,
I mean, to add on to that, you shouldn't be taking money from anyone that's not an accredited investor to begin with. So it's like, how many people out there have friends and family members that are accredited investors? I mean, it's just, I mean, that is a huge barrier right there.
Yeah. But there are funds or investors who are like, well, how'd your friends and family go? How much did you raise? How much, like, positioning you to like, how much do the people around you believe in you, right? Like, they're going to judge you off of that. And some people don't have people who believe in them. Some people don't have people around them who have money, yet they are going to be your most successful business or the best founder you've ever worked with. So I think there's some work to be done there. Haven't quite.
You did say something in there that, I mean, to me is the paradigm shift is like, hey, just start selling it and see if there's anything in there, right? Where I feel like a lot of people who raise money are scared to actually get it out there to see what their baby looks like. And I feel like an investment would come quicker if they were able to show that there is a market for this that actually has dollars in hand, instead of, hey, I have this idea, I put it on a piece of paper, I think you should give me some money.
Well, the thing is, like, even taking it one step further, it's almost a big contradiction in the sense of, hey, we want to invest in a diverse portfolio of companies. You can't then hold that against them if they weren't able to raise money from a friends and family round, because it's like, hey, I'm trying to get out of the streets so that I can help people out. And it's just, I mean, it just doesn't work. I mean, it's like, you're trying to leave that area. So invest in me and don't hold it against me because I don't have a bunch of rich friends that can help my business.
In 2020, Harvard Business Review says that 2.3% of VC funding, women-led startups of that. And then about 12% of decision makers at VC firms are women, and most firms don't have a single female partner, also from the Harvard Business Review. There you go.
We're getting there, but there are a lot of work to do. I think another big failure point of the friends and family expectation is, with actual accredited investors come, I think one of the things that we had mentioned to talk about today is like the advisor network, people who can mentor you and give you advice on how to execute that money. When you're doing a friends and family, like, you're just a founder all of a sudden with maybe $200,000, maybe $100,000. And if it's your first time out the gate, like, what are you supposed to do with this money? Right. And so I've seen people who have done those rounds, like, money not used to best, best road to success, best growth, right? Like, there's no plan for it. It's just like, oh, we've got money. Let's buy swag now. Let's, and like, yeah, look, where's the strategy?
Buy the swag and send it to Tim and I.
We have a remote swag shop now. I'll hook you guys up.
Yes. I've been wearing the same hoodie for weeks and I'm done with it. Like, I need something new.
You got an Instant Teams hoodie on the way.
Yes. Tim, you want to go? I got a laundry list of things I want to ask.
I'm just curious, just in the sense of how things have changed for you and your business. I mean, because like the topic of the day for the last couple of weeks has been, we can't find enough people. There's a labor shortage. So has that also been a great timing aspect for you and your business as well?
Yes and no. I mean, we are not safe from anything happening in the labor force, right? And so there are, just by nature of who we hire, right? Women most often, or men with now kids in the house, right? Working from home. So we have had to make changes and to like increase our recruitment, put more money behind it, letting people know about our remote jobs. And also because more jobs are remote, right? So before, like we had a little bit of a competitive space, especially in who we serve in military connected talent. But we do hire, outside of that talent pool. And that we were kind of like, we had the remote jobs. Now everybody has remote jobs. So even though the need is there and people are understanding it more, it's almost more of a competitive landscape for, okay, where do I want to work remotely? So it's been double-edged sword, and just, we know what we're doing. We've done it before. We can build great remote teams, but now people have more options, and just figuring out structurally and, strategically, like how we continue to stay on the front end of that.
I mean, I know me personally, if I had a labor shortage that I had X amount of positions that I had to fill, I would want to leverage you and Instant Teams because you have been there, you have done it, you know what it takes in order to be successful.
You know what that sounds like to me, though, is your competitive advantage changed. Like that is really like Chick-fil-A saying my pleasure and all the other fast food restaurants starting to steal that.
Yeah.
Like as ridiculous as a comparison is that it is, like forever that was their thing, right? And forever this was your thing.
Yeah.
And it changed because everyone was like, I need that because this is what makes them different.
Right.
And they were like, no. All we're going to do is not say it as much anymore. And we're going to ask you what your name is first and we'll still be fine.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's just wild. Like it's wild to think that, like, I just had to say that because I think
no. And, I put myself in the Chick-fil-A position, I guess. Like you're kind of like, oh, now everybody's going to be interested, right? It's almost kind of like this like eye roll moment, like, okay, now everybody recognizes, or now everybody thinks it's important. And, it's just one of those like personal channeling of frustration moments. But yeah, and I mean, that is our value to our customers, right? Companies across the nation are struggling for talent, don't have the means or the access to remote talent. And really, that is a part of our round coming up, is that, what we do now is mostly managed services, meaning we have our own technology that allows us to put the teams together, build the team, manage the teams. But what the past 18 months has showed us is the demand for remote talent overall. So our 2.0 is the technology becoming like a remote talent marketplace and allowing people and companies to be able to come and find remote talent. So that's the evolution that has come from the lessons of the past 18 months.
I mean, I would love it if you had the relationship in place where you can say the top 5 skills that are needed right now are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I would love to hear whatever those, maybe the top couple skills that are in demand right now. But then being able to go to local community colleges or local universities and saying, hey, you all need to start teaching this stuff because this is what's in demand right now. So please start doing it. I mean, is that on your roadmap, or do you track that data?
100%. And that is a part of, I start to get excited, right? Like, this is where we're going. Like, we just need the money and the round to get there, is the gap. So whether it's just pure digital readiness, what are digital skills? What is having, 4 Chrome browsers up at the same time look like on a screen? Like, they're just very basic things that some people don't understand, but have amazing skill sets that just need a new function or a new way to demonstrate those as an employee. So a lot of training. And what we've seen a lot of is like tech support, customer support, tiered, right? Not necessarily, we have entry-level teams, we have mid-tier teams, we have top-tier teams. So there's, a spread of where the talent can come in, where they can go, where they can start. But the customer support, tech support, sales, operations, like these things that can be done 100% remotely. Now people are like, oh, well, there's value there. Like, who do we need and how do we get there? So training will be involved. Like, the workforce development full circle has really been a vision of ours from day one. We just, got to build the process to get there. But yeah, the marketplace model, the remote talent, the training to get people into these specific lanes, that's all coming.
I expected Tim to ask this question, but he hasn't, so I'm going to. Just knowing Tim, I feel like this is something he would ask. Say what?
So that's always scary to hear. Okay.
No, he'll agree with this statement. He probably has no idea what I'm going to say, but I feel like it's at the right time in the conversation to swing it in there. Okay. So I don't know, 2010 timeframe, everyone wanted to build their own app. Everyone wanted to build their own thing. and it was a lot of people without software development experience that a lot of these ideas would come out, and they would get, Zuckerberg and mad that, so-and-so stole my idea, right? We're at a decade plus 1 year at this point now, and people still are kind of idea people, and there's tech people that can actually build it. You on your team, in your founders, have technical talent that can actually develop the thing. It seems like a lot of companies who still have not figured that aspect out are going to continue to lose, because they are going to take whatever money they do have, and this is just from a founder perspective, they're just gonna start sending that money offshore. They're gonna send it even in America and have people build this thing. They get something out there, and then they realize, oh, I've spent all my money on the tech to get it done, instead of actually like get this thing in people's hands. Like, how important has it been? I think I put that story in there pretty well. How, I don't know, Tim will be like, oh, I would have done this instead. But like, why aren't people figuring that aspect out yet? Like, because it's clear as day to me. Like, if you have 50 grand, 100 grand, you're going to put that towards technical things, instead of finding someone to actually build that for you on staff, on team, in your founder aspect. Like, how important has that been for you guys to actually get that the tech stack out there, so that you guys can actually succeed and not just have an idea, if you will?
Yeah. So again, one of my benefits is that my co-founder is a software engineer, right? So she has had that brain from day one and has brought that to the table. So again, ahead of the curve there. But we've kind of gone through 3 different stages. So like MVP straight out the door, like Liza built what we had for probably the first year and a half, 2 years. And then we outsourced to like a local firm in the National Capital Region to kind of get, that was right after the angel round, to get like the first, move us out of our manual process that was still technology based, but like WordPress plugin based, to get us to like the first stage of our own technology. And then after the Series Seed round last January, we are now working and building in our own in-house team. And so I think those stages were right for that time, but there definitely is something that has to happen when you do have the technology and the proprietary stuff behind you to get it out in front. And whether that's beta, or that's testing, or that's an opportunity for people to see before it's ready to go. Good ideas are good ideas. And a lot of people don't have that technical background. So finding, whether it's a founding team, maybe your first hire is not a CTO, but a software engineer or a product manager, like somebody who can take your idea and put it into technology. And I see that even when like I mentor startups, right? Full of great ideas, but totally have no idea on how to actually make it a product or get it out there.
I think it has to look so perfect. And it's like, hold on, if this thing really is rocket, like if this thing is rocket fuel for someone's life, then it will help someone and they'll be willing to take it even in its ugliest of form. I mean, for example, look at Reddit. I mean, it's the ugliest damn thing on the internet, and it's a top 5 website, I would assume.
And the user interface for Amazon is horrible. It's been the same for 15 years.
And all they do is sell books online.
Craigslist, I think, was another conversation I saw recently. Like, so yeah, it is. It's hard and it's a challenge, especially like if you're a solo founder and you're trying to figure all of this out. Like having a co-founder, my plus is that she was also a software engineer.
Sure. But imagine if you were 2 business folks, right, and didn't have that aspect of it. It's like, hey, like you better be rich.
Yeah.
Well,
or you find that a lot, like people who have an idea for an app on nutrition. Well, they're probably nutritionists or they're doctors, right? They'd have no hands-on way.
But you probably don't. And like, this is maybe getting into the weeds, but like, let's say it's that example, right? You just need to put together a website, have some sort of membership. If you want to charge for that thing, there's a WordPress membership thing out there. Pay the $70 to get it, and then charge people in that kind of way. And if you can't get people to pay you through that, what makes you think that just because they can download some stupid thing on the App Store, it's going to make anything better? And they don't want to hear that because their baby is perfect. And it's like, hold on.
Yeah. No, I mean, 5 years in, we're still not where we need to go, right? Like it's evolution.
Facebook is changing every single day. If Facebook can't figure it out, what makes you think that your idea
But bringing everything back down to the raising money aspect, I mean, it's a whole lot easier to go to investors and say, hey, we got 525 people that are on our platform. Now we need to add the technology so that we have these capabilities, as opposed to saying, hey, someday we may have 500 people. We don't know if it's going to work or not, but if you can give us a couple $1 million to try to figure it out, that's what we want to do. So, I mean, you've done things the right way, and a lot of people just don't get it.
Or want to hear it.
Yeah.
You got more questions, Tim? I still got
Go
more.
ahead, fire away.
Stuff. Okay. Just like quick stuff that I think you can answer. So like from a remote perspective, like a remote female perspective, however you want to take it, like how do you decide what attire to wear?
Attire, like clothes?
Yeah. I mean, because I'm a jeans and a black t-shirt kind of guy. I haven't worn jeans in a long time. I don't know why I even say that, but like, like I show up, I'm always wearing kind of like the same thing. Like as this, is there any kind of like, do you think about what you're going to wear? Do you care? Like, how does that whole thing get into it? Because I think a lot of females are like, oh, I need to dress this way. And you're rocking, I don't know, some sort of cool t-shirt and a jacket.
Because I am woman, hear me roar. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that one. So I can tell you though, over the past 5 years, I have become like a minimalist. Like I need to know like there's 5 shirts for the week and 5 types of pants. Leggings have been, most often because you can't see down. I put on jeans today for this interview, so you're welcome. My only go is like, still look professional. And that is different to different people. I don't, as you can tell by my hair, don't spend a lot of time on my hair. Like to me, an hour of working on hair, I can be spending with the kids in the morning before I know that I'm gonna have to work all day. So kind of, I have consciously thought about those things like routine wise, but still looking professional, right? Like,
well, I mean, does doing your hair make you a couple $1 million more?
Does not doing my hair make me a couple million?
Did you know that Matthew McConaughey was going bald at one point? I learned that in his book, Red Lights.
If somebody's going to invest in me off of my hair, then those are definitely not the funds or people that I'm going to be working with. So
I appreciate that.
Not worried about that.
Just general communication skills online. What are the top maybe 2 or 3 tips that you would give people on how to? I don't like the word professional because I think it's a BS metric, but how to be a little bit more aware or in the moment online for something like this as things continue.
Taken seriously.
Yeah. I actually have a book sitting right here next to me. I won't show it because I don't know like promo. I don't even know who this, the author, but it's called Digital Body Language, How to Build Trust and Connect No Matter the Distance. Those types of things, like you've got to like understand that communication, body language is very different in a remote, like just use it like, blocking your camera. Like,
hi.
What do people think about you? Like you're just being antisocial. You didn't get ready for the day. You're in a weird location. Like your brain is going to try to figure out the black hole. Right. And so like you're taking away from other people, listening to your words or focusing on a meeting. The caveat to that is the Zoom burnout is real. Like when you are just back to back all day and your brain is just boom, 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 boom. Sometimes you need to turn your camera off. And so sometimes with like the type of meeting, like if it's just a quick sync, do a phone call, use Slack, like use more async things versus getting on Zoom. So
consciously be thinking like, okay, like if I could have this Zoom meeting like this, and then I can make this an email instead, make this a phone call. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I would rather talk to a black screen though, than when I prepared something to provide a presentation or a speech. And then I see the whole audience, they're doing this, talking on the phone. And I know they're not paying any bit of attention to what I'm saying. I mean, that just drives me crazy because I put my time and effort into.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, I'm
large
sorry.
Pepperoni
Zach,
pizza.
Something? Yeah.
Large pepperoni pizza. And the cheesy breadsticks. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I think some of the things we try to teach our team is also like written. When you're reading something written, you're interpreting it in your own head, right? So tone, intent. Like we could write a sentence and read it in 5 different ways. And depending on how you read it out loud, it's going to dramatically change the next step you take.
That's so good. Cause you might be trying to just be like TLDR, right? Too long didn't read, like just make it a super, like a headline when this person's like, who is this donkey writing this thing like this? Like this is too specific, like too, I'm totally with it. Gotta, Jesse Hepburn says, how did you tackle initial customer traction? Was it a big splash or a gradual thing?
It has been a gradual thing for 5 years. I mean, and that's like those different iterations of one of our product, one of the thing. Like, I mean, there's situations out there where like you put something out and all of a sudden you've got 500 customers. I don't know. Are there any stories of it like that? I think I listened to a lot of How I Built This. Most successful companies, like there's no overnight, right? Overnight success is never overnight.
Yeah.
Totally gradual. And then
is that having realistic expectations then? Be like, yo, get 1 customer, get 10 customers type of thing? Is
yeah, I mean, that's because you're going to learn from those customers on what the next customers want or who your right customers are or who your right customers aren't. I mean, even year 5, we're still like perfect customer, right? Like, okay, now we're at year 5, like we can start to say no to this type of business because we have enough of the right type of business. I mean, it's the customer discovery. It's listening to, okay, you've got 20 customers. What do they not like about what you're doing? What do they like about what you're doing? All right, build more of what they like, keep the baseline, let some things go, whether that's product or service, right? Whether it's technology or the actual service that you're giving them. It's gradual and it's nonstop and it's exhausting because you never get to an end point. Like customers, it's constant discovery.
Right? Did the name Mad Skills hold you back?
It was going to. Good question. So we loved, I mean, founders, right? Like total pride in what we decided to go out with. We made a logo, we made a name. Looking back, like that meant more to the community. That meant more to the talent that we were wanting to serve. And it was the right move out the gate because we had to build that trust with that community, like that B2C side first. When we went, we were participating in a Founder Institute Accelerator and preparing for like this angel round. That's like why we decided to do the accelerator, to just give us like that support in the network that we didn't have before then. And we started to do some, bigger customer conversations. They're like, Mad Skills, are you like basketball? Like what are you talking about here? And like got all these really weird things that people thought Mad Skills was. And we were like,
because it was skills with a Z, right?
No, it wasn't. And that was my
maybe I'm just so used to Zack and the way that he types everything out.
That was my biggest pet peeve is people putting a Z on the end too. And I was like, okay, I'm done with this.
1 S in every kind of like comment that I take turns into a Z. It's so people can remember it. Don't hate on the Z. No. I just heard what you said. Don't hate the Z. It doesn't like you either. It doesn't want to be a part of that. And Instant Teams, I was going to give it an S or give it a Z at the end and change it from an S. No longer.
Well, thank you. We're on the same page.
I know. Zack, I've been wrong this whole time about Mad Skills because of you.
That is funny. But no, and that was happening a lot too, right? People reclassifying it. And like Mad Skills, like as domains and stuff, people like they were already kind of like taken. People were using them for other ideas. So very conscious decision, like, okay, next phase of this company with
when did that happen?
Behind it.
When did you change that?
That was January 2018.
Oh, it's been that long. Okay, I can't remember.
Yeah. And just rebranding a company. Like I have like a cheat sheet on what you need to do because it is a lot. Even just being in business for 2 years, all the places you have to update, all the documents you need to be sure that you change, socializing it to your audience, right? Being able
that has 2 Z's. You can't do that. That defeats the purpose of the S to a Z.
It's like bookends though. You got Z at the front.
I know.
But yeah, socializing it like so that you don't lose. Like there's risk in rebrand, right? Like you lose affinity, you can lose trust, you can lose
Well, big one just happened recently. Angie is it just Angie now?
Yeah, it's not Angie anymore. It's just Angie.
And it was interesting. Like I looked into why they changed, and just from remembrance, I think we're more than we were before, and so they changed it and something like that. It was interesting. It's still an A letter, which I think is important in that. Yeah. A couple of questions from the crowd. Sorry to cut your face off. There. Under remote work, I feel like you have to, whenever you see quotes, you have to do that. Under remote work, are there remote employees and then there are subcontractors, 1099 workers? There's educational support to the companies and the individual workers of the differences and the impact to taxes, etc.
So not a tax person and not an accountant. So I will just caveat that. But this is a huge conversation point that has been from day one at Instant Teams, right? We are a remote company. How do we classify people? And there are IRS regulations, like the tests where you go through this or that. Are they on schedule? Are they not? Are they using your platform? Can you control like all of those things? And so there are a lot of people use 1099s and W-2s wrong. And, to me, 1099s are like, if you're a 1099, you have your own LLC. You're your own freelancer, you're filing your own taxes, you're doing that type of work. There is gray space because of just how it works. But our model, because of that, like we have W-2 employees, so that we are employers in 42 states now. We are paying employer taxes. We have workers.
So that 500 whatever is W-2s.
Yep.
Interesting. So I had this as a note. I didn't think I was going to get to it, but I feel like it kind of got brought up. How big of a pain in the tail was PPP getting PPP because of all that over the year? Because you hear horror stories across the board.
Yeah. I will say our bank as a company, I won't name banks, was of no help. And that process is, it's
lender focused,
hard,
really.
Right?
Yeah.
The data and everything you had to like put together and the things you had to jump through. So, and right out the gate applied through our actual bank as a company and we're of no help. But we ended up finding through an investor introduction and our fractional CFO, like kind of a smaller bank that was able to move really fast. And so we got, what we needed in that first tranche of the PPP, I think by May, early June, that just helped, cover and float some of the loss that we had to keep people on board. So huge headache. Huge headache. And took two
Do you know
tries.
anyone? I don't know anyone that just like magically appeared.
No.
Oh, hey, this is the way that the government wants your taxes to be done. Hopefully you've been doing it that way. Your accountant hasn't been doing it that way, but this is the way that they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of those times when you're like, okay, all the compliance headache was important. Like we have done it the right way, right? Because when something like that happens and you haven't, you're going to be out of luck.
Chris Davidson was not a fan of Mad Skills with an S or a Z. Just wanted to say that right there. All right.
I didn't even get to read it. You just flashed it up there.
He basically said, "Good job changing your name. I didn't like the old one."
Okay. See?
And then Tim, jump in with a question. I'm just gonna click these things.
I think to round everything out back to what Jesse was asking about and the 5-year overnight success story that Erica had. It really, the key to startup success is having enough energy to survive until you find that product market fit. And it's just, you can't give up before it actually happens. And that's the problem. You just don't know where that finish line is, or you don't know when you're going to find that product market fit, but it just takes a lot of energy and you just got to fight through it.
Yeah.
Jesse also, I guess quickly, using influencers to acquire initial users. That's going to cost you probably a decent amount of money is the way I would look at it. I think the money could be spent differently. It's an avenue.
We didn't ever employ influencers from like a customer standpoint, but what I did do is tap into the community from the B2C side, right? To build the talent pool, to bring people in to want to be a part of Instant Teams. And I just kind of called it I forget what I called it. It was clever. I'll have to go back and find it, but basically found like people
the Mad Skills group online with a Z.
No Z. Basically found like writers and bloggers and kind of did like this blog blast so that on the same day, everybody wrote about the same story, but to their own audience and in their own way. And kind of that way people are like, oh, I've seen 3-4 blogs about this.
You don't see a lot about that anymore. People, that's like some old 2015 stuff right there. Like,
I think that anymore. And leveraging like your ambassadors, whoever your strongest supporters are, leverage them and then grow that way, as opposed to, I agree with you, Zach, influencers are going to be expensive.
In that kind of way, but if you can get them from the way that Erica said, like that's
sure.
Yeah, clever. All right. Anything else? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I'm sure there's a lot of things. I really enjoy this conversation.
Do you have questions for us? You can ask us questions and then.
No questions. I just always love. It's a good break to step out of the daily of running a company and actually talk about it. So I enjoy it. So thanks for the opportunity and just the opportunity to share.
And I guess I'll leave with, I just want to know who did the artwork behind you.
So actually, shout out to a local. You want me to actually say the name of the guy who painted the houses?
Erica mentioned that she's a minimalist. So
Yes. The rest of the room is decorated. It's the virtual background era, right?
Can't tell. This is what we see. This is like an email being written. I have
have enough personality. Like, you don't need background noise, right? Don't answer that.
I prefer to have
I used to have a nice collage. I don't know if you remember the last interview. I had like a nice collage.
Yeah, I like to give the shout out to Ninja Turtles, to Madison Ryan, who made that name thing. Poster for me. The Rock.
Where's your big belt? It's
on the floor down there because
that's not where it should be.
Because I'm fighting with Xerxes right now. He's no, I don't. It's there. I promise you. There's a dog right there, and there's a belt right there. So. Well, thank you, Erica. This has been great. Tim, always great to see you.
Yeah.
And continued success.
Absolutely.
Peace. We'll see you in a year, still with no confetti bombs. Boom. Laters.